All right. So first of all, before we go any further, let's talk about the system requirements of Photoshop. All right. I know most of you would have Windows PCs, am I right? Except for one or two that may have a Mac.
Yeah.
Right. So for those of you that have a Mac, you can have a look at it here. But let's go through the Windows specs, which is what most of us would use. So you will need a 1.6 gigahertz of faster processor with SSE2 support. Right. Usually any modern processor would do, right? I have my preference. I recommend nothing less than i5, i7 preferably, right? But you know, you can use what you have. A minimum of Microsoft 7 with Service Pack. With Service Pack 1, Windows 8 or Windows 10. Windows 10 is recommended. And I heard some people who are having issues because they have 32-bit Windows installed. Photoshop does not support currently this version 32-bit, so you would need a 64-bit version of Windows. Now, to have a 64-bit version of Windows, you would need a 64-bit processor and a 64-bit operating system. If you have any issues with that, of course, my company does tech support. I'll give you a great big discount on a consultation, yeah? All right. 4 gigs of RAM, minimum 8 gigs recommended. Right now, in order for you to use more than 4 gigs of RAM, you need 64-bit anyway. Right? If you have 42-bit, you can only go up to 4 gigs. You need 5.2 gigs of available hard disk space. So DJMJ, how much space you have? You said 3 something?
6 MG.
Wait, what? You're not there yet? All right, but anyway, so you will need that 5 gigs available hard disk space to install and an additional 2.4 gigs to download all optional content. Of course, you need additional space to save your files and to work with your files as well. All right, because the files use up temporary storage space on your drive. All right, and that will tend to fill up pretty quick. All right. It's recommended that you have a 1280 by 800 display resolution. If you have something smaller, you can get by. It'll just be a little bit more difficult navigating around the operating system, around the application. Sorry. Microsoft DirectX 9 or 10 compatible display driver. Most of you shouldn't have any issues with your basic video driver. DVD-ROM, of course, everybody here seems to be a pirate of the Caribbean, so they don't need DVD, right? What they need is an internet connection. So yeah, these are the system requirements. That's what you would need to install. If you have Android, it will not work. You would need Windows or Mac. If you have a tablet, you will also not be using the version of Photoshop that we will be using. You will be using a slightly watered down version in the best case scenario. All right. So I would encourage you guys to look into getting desktop PCs or laptops or Macs for working in Photoshop. Okay. Any questions about the system requirements? Go ahead.
Yeah. But that hip hop trap, they send a link for me.
The what? The what?
The YouTube link.
The YouTube link for what exactly?
That hip hop trap thing you have on it up there. Is looking nice. Send that for me. Send that for me.
Send that for you. All right. Yeah. No problem, man. I'll do that. Yeah. Okay, make it start playing in my head.
I have a question.
For
the Photoshop, you need a mouse or you can do it with the
Photoshop. Okay, I recommend for Photoshop you use one hand on your mouse, one hand on your keyboard. Yeah.
Okay. But you need a mouse.
It is recommended. I don't think you can get very far in Photoshop without a mouse. So I would say yes, you need a mouse.
Okay.
Yeah, you can use the touchpad on your laptop. It'll be a little bit more cumbersome navigating, but it'll work. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I do it in Photoshop or whatever it is now. Do you
Yeah.
think that a laptop, if you're doing a lot of graphic design work and for example, you working with Premiere and InDesign and Illustrator, do you think that a laptop is the best fit?
Do you think that laptop is okay? Let me ask you a question. What do you think I use it now? I'm actually using a laptop right now. I'm using a laptop. It's an HP Envy DV6 with an i7 processor. I think right now I have 8 gigs of RAM in there, and I have a dual monitor setup. So yeah, laptop and work. That is actually my my main system that I use at my office. I mean, I have other systems.
You have a dual monitor with your laptop?
Yeah.
Sorry, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
What I was thinking of doing is upgrading my system, like putting more RAM and putting more memory inside of it.
That is always a good idea. It's not about whether you have a laptop or not. If you're dealing with Photoshop, you're looking for more RAM and you're looking for more memory. Yeah. So if you can do it, by all means, go ahead and do it.
Well, I currently have a RAM card on it way down, so.
Okay. All right. And that's for your laptop?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Any RAM upgrade, trust me, guys, you need as much RAM as you can get. You need the best processor you can get. You need as much storage as you can get. And if possible, a solid state drive is recommended. The difference between a solid state drive and a regular drive is that the solid state drive have no moving parts. So because of that, it's like a flash drive and it's able to pull data a lot quicker. So what you will find is you will get better performance. Photoshop will perform better, Windows will perform better. So that is what I would recommend. Yeah. I also use a solid state drive on the system that I currently use Photoshop with. Of course, you don't have to have a setup like that, right? As long as you can get Photoshop to run, you can make it work. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we move into what you guys really want?
Your dual screen setup, it's 2 additional screens or your laptop screen?
No, it's my laptop. It's my laptop screen and 1 additional screen. Yeah.
I have the same setup.
Yeah. Simple setup, man.
Yeah, it's a good setup.
Yeah, but a necessity when you work, especially with workflows like mine. For instance, I regularly use both Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop side by side, right? Or even InDesign and Photoshop side by side. So having multiple screens allows me to do things like move easier between them. So it just works. Even things like searching for content, whether it be online and working in Photoshop on a separate screen, it helps the workflow, right? Okay, so everybody can still see my screen, right? Right. So
yes, sir.
That is the screen that you should be looking at if you are. Let's keep it light because I'm gonna post those videos on YouTube afterwards. If you're a pirate of the Caribbean, so I'm gonna start there for you guys who are new to Photoshop, right? Let's just take it from the beginning and start with the basics.
So we're getting the link. We're getting the link to go on YouTube.
Yeah, once I post the videos on YouTube, I'll send you the link. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody with me, everybody can see my screen right now, and everybody can get their Photoshop to that point, which is where the software actually opens up. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, good. From there, usually the first thing you want to do is file menu. You either want to create a new document or you want to open a document that you've been previously working with. For our purposes, let us look at the new document dialog box. All right, and sorry for opening the other screen. So, all right. So for the guys who have had difficulty with figuring out what to do in Photoshop, after that class, you should at least have a pretty good start. All right. So click on File and New to create a new document, and then from there you can create the settings for your document. Now we can work on documents for different purposes, as you can imagine, right? If you look at the top here, if you have CC 2019, it will look like mine. If you don't, it might look a little different. But you see we have settings for photos, settings, or they're actually preset settings, right? For photos, for print, for art and illustration, for web, mobile, film, and video. So you would select a preset or template based on what you're going to be working with. You need to keep two main things in mind when it comes to creating graphics, right? Usually we design graphics either for print or for screen. When we say for screen, we mean for the web, for your TV, for YouTube, whatever the case, whatever screen that we're looking at it on, right? Now, if you're designing for print, you want to use print settings. And if you're designing for web or the screen, you want to use the appropriate setting. Why? Because of the resolution. So we're going to be working with an 8.5 by 11 document. 8.5 by 11 document is your standard letter size paper. So all of you should have a standard size paper with some printout on it to get an idea of what that looks like. So our width is going to be 8.5 by 11, making it a portrait-oriented layout. We have portrait layouts and we have landscape layouts. Everybody understand the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So just for those that don't get it, a portrait layout is taller than it is wide, and a landscape layout is wider than it is tall. All right. The important thing here is the resolution. For the guys who've been in Photoshop for a number of years, what resolution do we use for print graphics?
Always 300.
Always 300. Right.
300 dpi.
Right, 300 dpi. DPI means dots per inch, or you might see it written as PPI, which is pixels per inch, right? They mean the same thing.
Yeah.
What about if you're designing for web or for screen? What resolution would you use?
72.
72, right. See, we have some guys with experience here. So we would use 300 for print, which will ensure us good print quality. And we would use 72 DPI or 72 pixels per inch for screen, which will ensure that our document appears at the accurate size that we expect on screen. And we're talking about pixel size. Right? What about color mode here? We have an option for color mode. We have RGB, Grayscale, Bitmap, CMYK Lab. And let's forget about all of the others for now. And we're just looking at RGB and CMYK. Tell me.
So RGB, I usually use RGB, real color. CMYK is almost like a faded of the real colors, as best I can say.
Okay. All right.
CMYK is more for printing and the RGB is for screen, basically.
Right. So RGB stands for red, green, and blue. And that is the RGB color mode. It's what all screens use to generate color. They use different intensities of red light, green light, and blue light to generate all of the colors that you see on your screen. All right. So you want to use RGB to ensure that you can get the full color range or full color spectrum for your screen graphics. And RGB is the color mode that will give you the widest range of color. All right, everybody got that? CMYK, on the other hand, I know a lot of people tend to shy away from it because they can never get the bright red that they want, and they can never get the bright green that they want, and they can never get the bright blue that they want, right? But there's a reason for that. CMYK stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And that is the color mode that we use for printing. If you check your printer right now, your printer doesn't print in RGB, your printer prints in CMYK. So we would use CMYK color mode to simulate printing color, right? And simulate the colors that your printer can give you. Here's what will happen if you use it wrongly. Any of you who've done graphic designing before, ever do a layout? It looks beautiful on the screen, right? It's just what you want. And then you go to print it and then it looks like crap. The colors are all wrong. It's not what you expected. The effects doesn't come out.
It happened to me already.
It happened to you already. Right. That will happen to you if you design in RGB and attempt to print in CMYK. Now, we have a lot of different types of printers, and some modern printers can do a pretty good job of emulating almost all the full spectrum of colors you can get in RGB, but they still cannot do all. No printer will give you the full spectrum of color you can get in RGB. If you doubt that, just try using using pure green and printing pure green, right? It will not look the same at all. So in short, we want to use CMYK whenever we designing something for print, and RGB whenever we're designing something for screen, right? And the reason is just to ensure that we can get the color, correct color when printing with CMYK. Otherwise, we just use RGB all the time. So for our purposes now, and because it might be easier for you and more attractive for you, and because we're not going to be printing any graphics that we're doing here virtually, I'm going to use the RGB color mode. All right. Now, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit gives you a wider range of colors. We will talk about that a little later. And we have different options for background. We have white, black background color. We can also go transparent. I typically leave a white background. All right. And then we create. Okay, sorry, I had switched it up to, but anyway, for today, that's fine. I really want to
let me ask a question, Alan. Let me ask a question.
Document, yeah.
As you talk about the CMYK, is it good to edit in CMYK, or are you saying that we can edit in RGB and then convert back to CMYK?
What will happen if you edit in RGB and convert to CMYK is you will edit, it will look good, and then as soon as you convert it, first of all, it'll ask you to flatten, which you don't have to do, but then it's going to change your colors, and your colors are not going to look the same. So what I would suggest you do is edit and do your design for anything that has to be printed in CMYK, so you don't get hung up on the fact that you saw a pretty green that you like and you cannot reproduce it in CMYK. Yeah.
All right.
Like I said, I'm only using RGB today because we're working on the screen, right? And it gives us a wider range of color. We're not going to be printing it. All right. But work in CMYK from start to finish for anything that's going to be printed. And as a matter of fact, if you have some items that are going to be both printed and used on the screen, which one do you think you should start to work in first?
CMYK?
CMYK, because that one will limit the amount of color, and then you can have the same color being used in the print version and on screen. Whereas if you do the RGB first, you might have a bright color logo on screen, but then all of your printed artwork looks dull because the printer cannot reproduce that color. All right. So if you're in doubt and you're doing both, go with CMYK. It will limit your color, but it will ensure that you can get accurate color when you are producing your documents, whatever documents are there. Cool.
Yeah.
Should we follow along?
Yes, you can follow along. If you have your computers, feel free to follow along. I've just created a new document. It's an 8.5 by 11 landscape document in RGB, 300 pixels per inch. We're just going to look at the main aspects of the Photoshop interface.
You can repeat that a bit slower, please.
Oh, sorry. In terms of the settings, let's just go through it again. So we created a new document, file, new. We're using a print preset, right? And we're using letter. So it's 8.5 by 11 inches, resolution of 300 pixels per inch. And for today, because we're not printing it, we're using RGB color with a white background. Everybody got that?
Yes, sir.
And because we had a landscape the first time, I'm going to switch it back to landscape and create. So this is our document. So that is how you create a new document in Photoshop. You always want to start with a new document. You should know what you're working on from the onset, and you should also know the size of whatever you're working on. All right. So that should be your starting point. Any questions up to that point?
Everything good from there.
All right, cool. Okay, let's look at the basic interface of Photoshop. So just like any other basic application, we have our menus up here: file, edit, image, layer, type, select, filter, 3D view, window, and help. We'll be going through them in various classes as we go along, not in detail right now, but I'm sure you guys have a pretty good idea what each of those for. File deals with your files, whether it is creating a new file, opening a file, saving a file, printing a file, and so on. All right, importing a file, exporting a file. Then directly below that, we have what is called the options bar. I can actually undock it here so you can see what it looks like. That is your options bar. Now the options bar typically resides directly below the menu, and it changes based on what tool you have selected. It basically shows you the options for any active tool. All right. So your options bar doesn't remain the same. It changes based on your active tool. Of course, to the left side of the screen here, you have your various tools, which we'll be going through in detail. Some will be spending more time on than others, right? So that's your toolbox with the various tools. And on the right side, you have your various panels, right, which we use during regular design. The main ones that we're going to be working with is your layers panel, right? We'll be looking at the paths, but your layers panel, your character panel, your paragraph and glyph, which is working with type. We're also going to be looking at color swatches, but not so much. We're going to be looking at the properties panel. Sorry, my computer a little bit slow to respond right now. But the properties panel and styles as well. Okay. Now, there are a number of other panels that are not visible here at the moment. And for all of them, you can pull them up from the window menu. So let's say, for instance, we want to look at our brushes panel, right? We would select brushes and our brushes panel would show up in the side, right? So we're not going to focus on all of them. Like I mentioned, we'll be sticking with those that you'll be using for everyday designing: the layers, the character paragraph glyphs, the properties, and styles, right? And we'll go through the others as we go along. Okay. So let's get to some of the basics. Let's look at the tools that we have to work with in Photoshop, right? And the first tool I want to start with is not the tool at the top, but I want to start with the tool I'm going to give you the homework on and probably give you my homework one time. And that is your shape tool. Now, your custom shape tool actually is bundled along with your other standard shape tools. So you might see the rectangle tool as the active tool, or you may see the ellipse tool as the active tool. They're all the same ones, right? So you press and hold to reveal any hidden tools that may be hidden under the particular toolbox icon or button that you're looking at. All right. So for our purposes right now, I'm going to use the ellipse, and I'm going to use it to draw a circle on my document. To do that is very simple. We select the appropriate tool, and I want to do that while my layers palette is open, just so you can see what's happening. All right. And I'm going to click and drag. Now, there are actually two ways that you can add a shape to a document. I'm going to show you both of them. So, the first way is, a second. All right. So the first way is you can click and a dialog box will pop up asking you to select the size, height, and width of your circle. I'm going to draw a circle 5 inches by 5 inches. All right. And notice my active color or my foreground color here is red. Actually, well, the previous setting. So anyway. All right, let's use that. So we have a 5 by 5 circle. So that's one way to add the shape to your document. Can anybody tell me what's the second way? And I want to add, for the second one, let's do a rectangle. What's the second way to add a shape to your document?
Click and drag.
Click and drag.
Right, click and drag. So you click from top right, bottom left, or vice versa, or whichever direction you decide to go, right? And drag the shape. Now, I haven't released my mouse button yet. I'm still dragging, right? But while you're doing that, try holding down Shift. And what that will do is that will allow you to increase both the height and the width proportionally. So it will allow you to draw a square, for instance, with the rectangle tool, or it will allow you to draw a perfect circle with the ellipse tool, right? If you release Shift, it's going to allow you to draw a rectangle in any dimensions that you like, right? So just keep that in mind. Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Right.
I
So
just see something on
Like when you release the shift, it does like minimize.
It doesn't minimize, it will jump to wherever you're pulling it, the point with the mouse. Yeah, so
Okay.
let me just demonstrate again. So if I'm clicking in the top right, bottom left, I can come down straight like this, right? So I can make a tall
Yeah.
box. However, if I just press shift right now, it's going to convert that into a rectangle for me, meaning
Yeah.
same height, same width. So if I go down as much as I want, it's not going to increase in height unless I also go across. All right, that's called increasing the size proportionally. Now, you wanna keep that in mind, because when you're doing graphics, there are certain things that we can stretch and skew, meaning we don't have to resize proportionally, and then there are some things that we must resize proportionally. You understand that? For instance,
Yes.
anytime you resize a circle in a way that is not proportional, it is no longer a circle. Is that a circle?
Nope.
No.
No.
A
Oval
circle,
shape.
right? A circle is perfectly round, and a square is perfectly square, unlike a rectangle. Here's some other things that you're gonna want to ensure that you increase proportionally or resize proportionally. People's faces and features, right? You try taking a photo of yourself and stretching your face tall or wide and see how ugly you look, right? Nobody likes to see themselves skewed in those ways. So whenever you're dealing with people and their features, you want to increase in size proportionally, right? What else? I want some examples from you guys. What else do we want to increase proportionally at all times?
Landscapes.
Landscapes, yes. What else? Nobody? No ideas? You guys still see my screen, right?
on the logo.
Excuse me?
I'd say avoiding copyright on a logo.
You'd say what?
Avoiding copyright on a logo.
Avoiding copyright on a logo. I'm trying to decipher exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
by
because
that.
you're recording for YouTube, you said.
Oh, I'm recording for YouTube, so you're assuming that they're going to flag it because I pulled up
Most
the Nike
definitely.
logo.
Well, no, like let's say you take a logo, right, as reference, and you wanna, if you use the exact logo, you get copyrighted. So you can try changing it up a bit.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, but I don't think I'll get flagged for that. Even if it is, I'm gonna do it to make my point. I'm not too worried about that.
I'm talking about me. My teacher always told me that.
Oh, okay. And we do have a class on copyright, because that is actually part of the exam as well. But really, I want to make my point right now. And as a graphic designer, you're gonna be working with a lot of logos, so you'll get used to it. Oh, not the right kind of document. 1 second. I'm just trying to give an example. All right. So one of the things that you always want to ensure that you keep in proportion as well is logos. Somebody was saying to avoid copyright with logos, right? Avoiding copyright infringement is one thing. You also want to ensure that you represent the logo properly. So if I use this, right? You know that there is no copyright infringement here because that's not the Nike logo. It's in the likeness of the Nike logo, but it's not actually the Nike logo, if you understand what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's what I mean by you want to increase things, certain things proportionally. You want to keep the height in the same ratio as the width, all right? So shift is what will help you do that when resizing in Photoshop. All right. The next tool that I want to get you to look at is the move tool, which is the very first one. So I skipped the first one. I created a few shapes so we can see how the first tool actually works, the move tool. We can use it to move objects on our document. So if you click on an object with the move tool, and you drag, you can move it across. Now, look at the properties for the move tool as well. You have two options here, auto select and show transform controls, right? Auto select will allow you to simply click on the object to select it. Right now, I've removed the auto select option. So if I want to select the ellipse or the oval, I can't just click on it. I have to right click and select ellipse, or open up the layers palette and select the appropriate layer. Whereas with auto select layer selected, I can simply click on the layer and the active layer will automatically switch to the one that's clicked. Now it can get a little bit confusing when you're working with more complicated designs with possibly hundreds of layers, right? But I tend to leave my auto select enabled, all right? And you can also auto select layers, or you can auto select groups if you're working with a design that has multiple group layers in it. The other option is show transform controls. A lot of people like to design without the transform controls visible. I like it visible. It also provides you an easy way for you to transform your objects. Transform meaning resize, stretch, rotate, skew, distort in different ways. All right. And we'll be going through all of the ways that you could do that later on in subsequent classes. But show transform controls allow you to simply click on the bounding box that surrounds every object that is active, right? It surrounds it with 8 little squares. We call them handles. And if you simply click on that box, it'll allow you to resize it. If you click on the outside, it'll allow you to rotate it. If you choose to not have that enabled while you're designing and you want to make a transformation, what you will have to do is go to the edit menu, and you can either free transform, which will be the same thing as clicking on the bounding box itself, and you'll be able to make all of the transformations there. Or you go to edit, transform, and you click the particular transformation that you want to do. So in that case, if I wanted to skew, I would select skew, and all it would allow me to do is to skew and not do anything else. All right, skew up, down. All right, so transform it in different ways. Everybody got that?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah, man, yeah, man.
Okay.
But using terms I'm not sure the people that new to face to Photoshop are aware of, like skew,
like skew. Okay.
Yeah.
Well. Let me help you with that. Some of the terms are going to be new.
Not me, but them.
I know, but I do
You don't
expect you
lie,
guys to.
You don't lie.
Is that right? Is that right? Let's we're gonna take it step by step, a little bit slower in subsequent classes. But for now, let me add that to your homework. All right. And as a matter of fact, let's talk about your homework first. We have 5 minutes left. Let's talk about your homework. So, everybody ready? Everybody paying attention?
Yeah, we do.
Sir.
You know the vibes already, buddy.
All right, cool. While I talk, I'm gonna demonstrate for you. But the homework is pretty simple. What I want you to do is to design a scene for me. Scene meaning S-C-E-N-E, right? Everybody knows what I mean by scene?
No.
No?
Yeah.
All right. Do you guys know what is a movie scene?
Oh, that. No,
Yeah, scene, S-E-N-E. When you look out your window, you see a scene. Everything you look at actually can be considered as a scene, right? So I want you to create.
You can repeat yourself a bit, please.
Yeah, no problem. So I want you to create a scene for me using only shapes, right? So you can use circles, rectangles, you can use custom shapes. And I will also show you how to create your own shapes before you leave. At least I'll give you a quick overview on that. But create a scene using only shapes for me. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be anything difficult. I just want you to use your creativity and come up with something. Now I'm just randomly putting together objects from shapes that I have built into my Photoshop, and you guys should have all of these as well. All right.
Yeah.
I know I haven't showed you guys how to change colors yet. We coming to it. I just putting together a 2-minute scene so you can understand what I mean. All right, and then let me just.
Can it be any dimension though?
For now, you can use any dimension. Yeah, I'll let you have that flexibility. All right. Okay, let's see. Let me just throw in one more thing. Yeah, let's just do this right there. All right, guys. So I'm not going to restrict you as to what it is you can do. The scene is going to be seen all on your own. But pretty much that is the homework for me. All right. Now, here's the add-on part to the homework. We really don't have time for me to explain what all of the terms mean for you guys. I'm going to be explaining a lot as we go along, right? But for homework, I want you to look at the transform controls. So you're going to be transforming your objects anyway, right? But if you look at the transform controls, we have a number of controls here: scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, wrap, rotate in various degrees, and flip, right? I want you to go through these and figure out what they do and what they represent, right? For instance, I'm sure everybody knows what scale means, right?
Yeah.
Size of the file you're editing.
Not the file, but the object, right? Remember, we're working with one file, but we have multiple objects, and each object shows up as a layer in the layers palette, all right? So we can manipulate individually. For instance, I have a very bad sun on the corner of my graphic here. If I wanted to manipulate it, it would be represented by shape 1 in my layers palette. What I also want you to do is manage your layers well. So I'm going to double click on the text here, shape 1. I'm going to change that to sun. All right, so I know what it is. I can click either on the object or on the layer, and I'm going to rename that one bird. Then I have cloud 1 and cloud 2. And all I'm doing is double clicking on the name part of the layer in the layers palette, right? And it'll allow me to edit it. You could also right click, and there should be an option here somewhere. But anyway, I simply just double click. We're gonna change that to sky. And we're going to change that to, let's just say, grass for now. All right, guys. Now we have less than a minute. If it does cut off and I don't finish explaining, I will send you the link right back so we can connect, okay? But pretty much that is what I want from you for your homework. Create a scene for me. You can use as much detail as you like, using only shapes. For those of you who know how to use custom shapes, and we haven't done that as well, but that is done using the pen tool. You can experiment with that for those of you who are willing to jump in, right? You can also use the pen tool to create shapes that can be used in your document. All right, so I'm not going to restrict you as it comes to that. So custom shapes, built-in shapes to create a scene